I've just turned 89. It's hard to believe how quickly time slips away. If I could sit across from my 61-year-old self right now, I'd have so much to say. You see, back then I thought I had everything figured out. I believed there was still plenty of time to pursue dreams, mend relationships, and focus on what really matters. But I was wrong. Life had a few surprises waiting for me, some beautiful, others devastating. Looking back, I wish I had known how fragile time is, how moments can vanish before you even realize they're gone. If I had known, would I have spent so much time worrying about what others thought of me? Would I have let my pride ruin the most important relationship of my life? Would I have chased success so relentlessly, only to find it wasn't the kind of success that truly mattered? Here's something I want you to think about. When was the last time you slowed down to savor a moment? To just breathe and feel truly alive? Most of us are too busy chasing what society says we should want. We miss what's right in front of us. Let me tell you a secret. At 89, I don't regret the things I failed at. I regret the things I didn't try, the people I didn't love harder, and the time I didn't cherish. And trust me, there's one decision that changed my life completely, one that most people don't see coming. Stay with me because I'll share that story soon. I promised I'd tell you about the decision that changed my life. It wasn't a grand, dramatic moment. It wasn't something you'd read in books or see in movies. It was something much simpler, but also far more difficult. It happened when I was 65. I was sitting alone at my kitchen table, staring at the ticking clock on the wall. The house was quiet, almost eerily so. My kids had grown up and moved away, my career had slowed down, and suddenly I found myself with nothing but time and a haunting sense of emptiness. I thought, is this it? Is this what life amounts to after all these years? I had spent decades building what I thought was the perfect life, working hard, raising a family, striving for success. But somehow I had lost the ability to be truly happy. Then it hit me, I wasn't living. I was existing. I was going through the motions, ticking off life's checklist without ever really asking myself what I wanted. And the truth? I didn't know anymore. I had been so busy pleasing others, following expectations, and keeping up appearances that I had forgotten to ask myself a very important question. What kind of life do I want to live? That day I made a promise to myself. I would stop living for others and start living for me. Sounds simple, right? But it wasn't. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I started small. I began saying no to things that didn't bring me joy. I reconnected with old friends. I apologized to people I had hurt. And here's the surprising part. Not everyone liked the changes I was making. Some people thought I was being selfish, even reckless. But you know what? It didn't matter. For the first time in years, I felt alive. Now, let me tell you about something I learned the hard way. Not everyone is meant to stay in your life forever. This was a tough lesson. I believed for a long time that loyalty meant holding on to every relationship, no matter how toxic or draining it became. But that's not true. Sometimes walking away is the most loving thing you can do, for both yourself and the other person. I remember a friend from my younger days. Let's call him Jack. Jack and I had been close for years, but as we got older, our friendship started to change. Became one-sided, full of criticism and negativity. I tried to make it work, but every interaction left me feeling drained and small. Finally, I made the decision to let that friendship go. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And do you know what happened next? I found peace. Walking away isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It's an act of self-care. It's giving yourself permission to protect your energy and prioritize your well-being. Now, here's a question for you. Is there someone in your life who's holding you back? Someone whose presence leaves you feeling more anxious than uplifted? If so, I encourage you to reflect on that relationship. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to let go. Another powerful lesson I've learned over the years is that simplicity is the purest form of happiness. In my younger days, I chased after big dreams, money, status, recognition. I thought those things would make me happy, and for a while they did, but it was fleeting. Real joy, I discovered, comes from the simplest things. A quiet walk in the park, the sound of rain tapping on the window, the laughter of a grandchild, a conversation with someone who truly listens. I want you to pause for a moment and think, What are the simple joys in your life? Sometimes we overlook them because they seem so small, but they are the very things that bring us the deepest peace. At this point, you might be wondering, if simplicity and peace are the key, why do we complicate our lives so much? It's because we're constantly told we need more. More money, more achievements, more followers, more approval. It's a trap, a dangerous one, but you can break free from it. When you stop chasing what society tells you is important and start embracing what truly matters to you, your life will change in ways you never expected. One of the most surprising lessons I've learned as I've aged is that it's never too late to start over. Society has this strange obsession with youth, as if life peaks at 30 and everything after that is a slow decline. But that's a lie. I've reinvented myself more times than I can count, and each chapter has been richer and more meaningful than the last. At 70, I learned how to paint for the first time. At 75, I took my first solo trip and discovered the joy of traveling alone. At 80, I wrote letters to people I hadn't spoken to in decades, mending old wounds and healing myself in the process. And today, at 89, I'm sharing my story with you. So, let me ask you, what have you always wanted to do but haven't done yet? What's holding you back? There's a twist to this story, though. A truth that most people don't realize until it's too late. And it's this: the greatest regrets aren't about the things we failed at. They're about the things we never tried. In the next part, I'll share a story that taught me this lesson in the most unexpected way, a story that changed everything for me. Stay with me because it might just change the way you see your own life. Let me tell you something that took me a lifetime to figure out. Success and happiness aren't what they seem. For years, I was convinced that success was about building a bigger life, achieving more, earning more, and collecting milestones like trophies. And you know what? I chased those things relentlessly. I thought they were the key to happiness, and for a while they seemed to be. My career was solid, my family was proud of me, and I checked off most of life's boxes. But deep down, I couldn't shake this strange, creeping emptiness that grew louder as the years went by. It wasn't until retirement that I truly began to confront that feeling. Retirement, the time we're all told to look forward to. No more deadlines, no more hustle. The golden years, they call them. But for me, retirement was the loneliest, most confusing chapter of my life. I suddenly had all the time in the world, yet I had no idea what to do with it. My carefully structured days turned into long, empty stretches of silence. I remember sitting on my porch one morning, staring at the sky, wondering why I didn't feel free or fulfilled like I was supposed to. Instead, I felt restless. I felt lost. That's when an old acquaintance, someone I hadn't seen in over 30 years, reappeared in my life and completely shattered the way I viewed everything. Her name was Linda. We had known each other back in our younger days, and to be honest, I never thought much of her life choices. While I was building a career and focusing on long-term goals, Linda was living in the moment. She traveled when she could, followed her passions, and worked odd jobs to support herself along the way. I remember thinking she was careless, someone who wasn't planning for the future. But when I saw her again in our 70s, she looked radiant, peaceful. There was a lightness about her that I hadn't felt in years. We sat down for coffee and she told me about her life. She didn't have much in terms of material wealth, but she had built a life filled with meaningful experiences, deep friendships, and a kind of joy that seemed almost foreign to me. She smiled at me and said, "I've never been rich, but I've always felt wealthy in the ways that matter." Her words stayed with me for days. I couldn't stop thinking about them. I started asking myself questions I had been avoiding for years. Had I been living for the wrong things? Had I confused external success with true happiness? The answers weren't easy to face. Here's the real twist. Linda wasn't the reckless one. I had recklessly sacrificed so many small, beautiful moments in my pursuit of something that didn't truly matter in the end. I had spent years chasing the illusion of success, only to find that it was hollow. Meanwhile, Linda had quietly built a life that was full and rich in ways that I had completely overlooked. That realization hit me hard. I thought about all the vacations I had postponed, the family dinners I had skipped, and the friendships that had faded because I was always too busy. I had been waiting for a future moment to finally enjoy my life, but that moment never seemed to come. And here I was, sitting on the porch at 70-something, realizing that I had missed so much along the way. But here's where the story takes another turn, a hopeful one. It's never too late to change. I decided right then and there that I wouldn't spend the rest of my life feeling regret. I would live differently. At first, it was uncomfortable. Change always is. I had to let go of my old definitions of success and start measuring my life by different standards, ones that couldn't be tracked on a resume or a bank statement. I began finding joy in the small, quiet things I had taken for granted for so long. The warmth of the sun on my face, the sound of my grandchildren's laughter, the smell of fresh coffee in the morning. These simple moments became my new treasures. I also started reconnecting with old friends, reaching out to people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some relationships were easily rekindled, while others had run their course. But every conversation reminded me of what truly matters: connection, love, and the time we spend with the people who bring meaning to our lives. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. I stopped worrying about what other people thought of me. I stopped measuring my worth by how much I had achieved. And do you know what happened? My life got lighter. Now, here's something I want you to think about. What kind of success are you chasing? And is it the kind that will actually make you happy in the end? Not the fleeting kind of happiness that comes from reaching a goal, but the deep, lasting kind that fills your heart and makes you feel at peace. The kind that sneaks up on you during an afternoon walk or a quiet moment with someone you love. In the next part, I'll share how redefining happiness helped me repair some of the most important relationships in my life. Relationships I almost lost forever. Because if there's one thing I regret most, it's the time I didn't spend with the people who mattered most to me. Stay with me. This story isn't over yet, and you might just discover something that changes how you see your own life too. If there's one thing I've learned in nearly 9 decades on this earth, it's that relationships are the true measure of a life well lived. Not money, not status, not even health. Don't get me wrong, those things have their place. But at the end of the day, it's the connections you build with others that give your life meaning. Sadly, I didn't always understand that. In fact, I learned it the hard way. Let me take you back to a Thanksgiving dinner many years ago. My family was gathered around the table, laughing and sharing stories. The house was filled with the smell of roasted turkey and freshly baked pies, and the sound of my grandchildren playing in the living room. It should have been a perfect day, but I wasn't really there. My body was at the table, but my mind was elsewhere, thinking about work, deadlines, and everything I hadn't accomplished yet. I kept glancing at my phone, feeling that familiar anxiety bubbling in my chest. Then, in the middle of dinner, my youngest granddaughter tugged on my sleeve and asked, "Grandpa, why are you always so busy?" That question hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't have an answer, but in that moment, I realized how much I had been missing. How many precious moments had slipped through my fingers while I was too distracted to notice. I wish I could tell you that I changed everything right then and there, but life isn't that simple. The truth is, I continued making the same mistake for years. I kept choosing work over family, status over connection, productivity over presence. I thought there would always be more time. Time to reconnect, time to make things right, time to be the person I knew I should be. But time is a cruel teacher. It teaches you by taking things away. A few years later, I lost my best friend, Tom. We had been friends for over 40 years. He was like a brother to me. But in the last decade of his life, we drifted apart. Not because of any big fight, but because life got in the way. We got busy. We stopped calling. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. I kept telling myself, I'll call him next week. We'll catch up soon. But next week never came. Tom passed away suddenly, and I never got that chance to reconnect. I stood at his funeral, overwhelmed with regret. I thought about all the times I had postponed reaching out, convinced there would always be another opportunity. If I could go back and have just one more conversation with him, I would give anything for that chance. Here's the harsh truth. We often take the people who love us most for granted. We assume they'll always be there, waiting patiently for us to have time for them. But time is never guaranteed. I realized I had spent years investing in things that didn't matter while neglecting the people who did. That realization was painful, but it also gave me the push I needed to change. I started calling my children and grandchildren more often. not to check in on their achievements or their plans, but just to listen to their voices and be part of their lives. I reconnected with old friends, even if it was just to say, "I'm sorry I've been distant. I miss you." Not every relationship was salvageable, but the ones that were became stronger than ever. And do you know what I discovered? The quality of your life improves the moment you start prioritizing your relationships. Here's a question I want you to think about. Is there someone in your life you've been meaning to reach out to? Someone you've drifted away from, not because of anger or resentment, but simply because life got busy? Don't wait. Call them. Text them. Show up at their door if you can. Don't assume you'll have time later, because later has a way of disappearing when you least expect it. I remember reconnecting with an old friend named Bill. We hadn't spoken in over 15 years. I had convinced myself that too much time had passed, that reaching out would be awkward or pointless. But one day, I decided to pick up the phone and call him anyway. To my surprise, Bill answered with a laugh and said, "I've been waiting for you to call, old friend." That phone call lasted 2 hours. We talked about everything, our families, our memories, the paths our lives had taken. It felt like no time had passed at all. And when we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in years. That conversation reminded me of something simple but powerful. It's never too late to reconnect with the people who matter. Even if years have passed, even if you've grown apart, it's always worth trying. Some of the most meaningful moments of my life have come from those second chances, from the relationships I thought were lost but weren't. But there's a twist to this lesson. While it's never too late to reconnect, sometimes the hardest and most important thing you can do is walk away from relationships that no longer serve you. For years, I believed that loyalty meant holding on to every relationship, no matter how toxic or draining it became. I thought letting go was a sign of weakness. But I've learned that it's the opposite. Walking away isn't about giving up. It's about choosing peace over chaos. It's about protecting your energy and surrounding yourself with people who lift you up, not pull you down. So I'll leave you with this question. Who in your life brings you joy? Who fills you with peace? And who, if you're honest with yourself, might be holding you back? In the next part, I'll share how I learned to let go of toxic relationships, and how that decision changed everything for the better. Stay with me. This part might be the most surprising of all. If there's one lie that holds more people back than any other, it's the idea that it's too late. Too late to change. Too late to follow your dreams. Too late to start over. We've all heard it, and at some point, most of us have believed it. Society tells us that life has an expiration date, that if we haven't achieved certain things by a certain age, we've somehow missed our chance. Let me tell you something, it's a myth. I've seen people start over at 70 and create lives more meaningful than anything they had before. I've seen others find love in their 80s after believing for decades that they'd be alone forever. Some of the most remarkable people I've met didn't truly find their purpose until they were well into their later years. Take George, for example. I met him at an art class when I was 70. He was 82 at the time, and he had just taken up painting for the first time in his life. I asked him why he started so late, and he laughed and said, "If I don't start now, when will I?" Over the next few years, George became one of the most talented painters I've ever known. His work was breathtaking, filled with color and emotion, telling stories of a life well lived. But more than that, painting brought him a kind of joy and purpose he had never experienced before. The real plot twist? George wasn't always the confident, vibrant man I knew. When he first retired, he spent years feeling lost, unsure of what to do with himself. He thought his best years were behind him. He told me once, "I wasted too much time believing that lie, that I was too old to do anything new." But the moment he decided to pick up a paintbrush, everything changed. It didn't just give him something to do, it gave him his life back. Here's the truth, it's never too late to become who you want to be. You don't have to have everything figured out by 30. You don't need to achieve all your dreams before 40. Life isn't a straight line. It's a winding road with unexpected turns, and sometimes the best chapters come when you least expect them. When I was in my late 60s, I thought my story was winding down. I believed the most exciting parts of my life were behind me. But then something happened that changed everything. I reconnected with an old passion, writing. I had always loved to write when I was younger, but life got in the way and I stopped. One day, I found an old journal buried in a box in my attic. As I flipped through its pages, memories came rushing back. I remembered how much joy writing had once brought me, and I decided to give it another try. At first, it felt awkward. My words didn't flow the way they used to, and I questioned whether it was even worth the effort. But little by little, it got easier, and something incredible happened. I started writing letters to my family, capturing stories from my life, things I'd never told them before. Those letters became treasured keepsakes. They sparked conversations I never thought I'd have with my children and grandchildren. Through writing, I found a way to connect with the people I loved most in ways that words had failed me before. So, if you're sitting there thinking it's too late for you, I want you to hear this. It's not. It's never too late to pick up a new hobby, learn a new skill, or start over. The only thing that's truly too late is when you stop trying. I've seen people go back to school in their 70s. I've seen others learn to play an instrument, volunteer, or take up dancing for the first time. Every time, they light up with a kind of energy that reminds you how much life there is still left to live. But here's where things get tricky. There's a difference between starting something new and holding on to things that no longer serve you. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is let go of old dreams that no longer fit who you've become. For years, I believed I had to finish every project I started, even if it no longer made sense. I thought giving up was a sign of failure. But what I've learned is that letting go can be its own kind of victory. Not everything is meant to last forever. Some dreams are stepping stones to something greater. Others teach you lessons along the way. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is close one chapter so you can begin a new one. So, let me ask you, is there something you've been holding on to because you think you have to? Something that no longer feels right but you're afraid to walk away from? So maybe it's time to release it. Not because you've failed, but because you're ready for something new. It's never too late to start again. It's never too late to change direction. And it's never too late to write a new chapter, one that feels truer to who you are today. In the next part, I'll share how letting go of what no longer served me opened doors I never expected. Doors that led to some of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. Stay with me. What comes next might surprise you. Letting go is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. It's also one of the most liberating. For much of my life, I held on to things long after they had served their purpose. Relationships, beliefs, even identities that no longer felt true to who I was. Why? Because letting go felt like giving up, and I was terrified of failure. But what I've learned is that letting go isn't about giving up. It's about making space for something better. It's about recognizing that not everything is meant to last forever, and that's okay. I remember the first time I truly let go of something that had defined me for decades. It was my career. I had worked hard to build it, and for years, it had been my identity. People knew me for what I did, and in many ways, I measured my worth by my success. But as time went on, I felt a growing restlessness, a sense that I was holding on to something out of habit, not passion. Still, I resisted the idea of stepping away. What would people think? Who would I be without my work? It wasn't until I found myself burned out and emotionally exhausted that I finally made the decision to leave it behind. And here's the surprising part. The moment I let go, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. For the first time in years, I felt light, like I had been carrying a heavy suitcase for so long that I forgot what it felt like to walk freely. But it wasn't just my career. There were people in my life I had to let go of too. This was the hardest part. You see, for years, I believed that loyalty meant staying in every relationship no matter what. I thought it was my responsibility to keep the peace, to hold on even when things became toxic or hurtful. But the truth is, not everyone is meant to stay in your life forever. I remember a friendship that had once been beautiful. We had been close for years, but somewhere along the way things changed. Conversations turned into criticisms. Time spent together left me feeling drained and small. Still, I held on, thinking I could fix it, thinking it was better to have something than nothing at all. But one day I realized something that changed everything. Holding on was hurting me more than letting go ever could. It wasn't an easy decision. It never is. But walking away from that relationship was one of the most loving things I've ever done, for both of us. Letting go wasn't an act of rejection. It was an act of self-care. It was a way of honoring who I had become and recognizing that we were no longer good for each other. And do you know what happened next? I found peace. Not immediately, of course. There were moments of doubt, times when I questioned whether I had made the right choice. But over time, I started to feel lighter. I found new friendships, relationships that felt easy and joyful, free of judgment or expectation. Letting go made space for those new connections to enter my life. It also made space for me to reconnect with myself. Here's something I want you to think about. What are you holding on to right now that no longer serves you? It could be a relationship, a belief, or even an old dream that no longer fits who you've become. Whatever it is, ask yourself, is this helping me grow or is it holding me back? If it's holding you back, maybe it's time to let it go. Not because you've failed, but because you're ready for something new. I've seen people transform their lives by letting go. I've seen them leave jobs that made them miserable, walk away from toxic relationships, and release old beliefs that no longer felt true. And every time I've watched them step into something better. But here's the twist. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean erasing the past or pretending it didn't happen. It means making peace with it. It means saying, thank you for what you taught me, and then moving forward with an open heart. I'll give you a personal example. For years, I regretted not spending more time with my father before he passed away. There were so many conversations we never had, so many questions I never asked. That regret weighed on me like a stone in my chest. But one day I sat down and wrote him a letter. I poured out everything I had been holding on to, the guilt, the sadness, the things I wished I had said. When I finished, I folded the letter and placed it in a small box in my closet. It didn't erase the past, but it set me free. Sometimes the act of letting go is as simple as writing a letter you'll never send. Other times, it's a conversation, a quiet decision, or even just a moment of acknowledgement. But every time, it brings you closer to peace. So, if there's something you've been holding on to, something that's weighing you down, I encourage you to release it. Not all at once, not perfectly, just a little bit at a time. In the next part, I'll share how finding peace allowed me to embrace something I never expected. A new beginning in the later years of my life that brought me more joy than I ever thought possible. Stay with me because what's coming next might be the most hopeful part of all. If you've made it this far, thank you. I know it's not easy to reflect on life's choices, the things we did, the things we didn't do, and the time we can never get back. But here's what I want you to take away from all of this. It's never too late to start again. Every moment is a chance to begin a new chapter. Every breath is an opportunity to change direction, to make different choices, and to live more fully. No matter how old you are, no matter how many mistakes you've made, you can always decide to create something new. I'm not saying it's easy. Starting over takes courage. It takes a willingness to step into the unknown and trust that the life waiting for you is better than the life you've been holding on to. But trust me, it's worth it. For years, I believed I was stuck. I thought I was too far down one path to ever change direction. I thought my story had already been written. But the truth is, life isn't a straight line. It's a series of twists and turns, beginnings and endings, and unexpected moments of grace. What I've learned is that the hardest thing to do, letting go of what no longer serves you, is also the most freeing. It opens up space for something new to enter your life. But here's the catch. You have to show up for it. So here's my challenge for you. Take one small step today toward the life you truly want. Just one. Maybe that means calling someone you've lost touch with. Maybe it means writing down a dream you've been too afraid to pursue. Maybe it's as simple as taking 5 quiet minutes to ask yourself, what do I want my life to feel like from this moment on? It doesn't have to be a big step. Small steps are powerful. They create momentum. Step turns into 2, then 3, and before you know it, your life starts to shift in ways you never imagined. I remember the first step I took when I decided to live differently. It wasn't anything dramatic. I simply started walking every morning. At first, it was just a way to clear my head. But over time, those walks became sacred. They gave me space to think, to breathe, and to reconnect with myself. One morning, I stopped to watch the sunrise. The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and gold, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. That sunrise reminded me of something I had forgotten. Life is still beautiful. Even after everything, the mistakes, the regrets, the heartbreak, there is still beauty waiting to be noticed. And so is your life. It doesn't matter where you've been or what you've done. There's still time. There are still conversations to be had, adventures to take, and love to give and receive. I know some of you might be thinking, but what if I fail? What if it's too late? Here's my answer. You will fail. We all do. Failure is just part of the journey. Every mistake is a lesson. Every wrong turn is a chance to find a new path. The only real failure is refusing to try. So if you take nothing else from this, take this. Don't wait. Live your life now. Not the life others expect of you. Not the life you think you should be living. Live the life that feels true to you, messy, imperfect, and beautiful. Along the way, remember this: cherish the people who matter most. Don't wait to tell them how much they mean to you. Don't assume there will always be time. Be present. Be kind. And when you can, forgive, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve peace. Let go of what no longer serves you. Whether it's a toxic relationship, an old dream that no longer fits, or a belief that's holding you back, give yourself permission to release it. Letting go isn't failure. It's freedom. And keep your heart open to new beginnings. No matter how many chapters you've already written, there's always room for one more. Before we go, I want to ask you one last question. What's the one small step you can take today toward the life you want? Think about it, and then take it. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and tell me what small change you'll make today. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to share, and I'd love for you to be part of this journey with me. Until next time, take care of yourself. Remember, it's never too late to live the life you were meant to live.